Hello everyone out there. It is Maureen Bangle from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and we are coming to you today on the North America Artistic Teams page to talk to you about your blonde toolbox. So I have the honor of sharing with you tools for blonding so that for the next month or so, my teammates on the North America Artistic Color team can share with you some great techniques. So while we're waiting for people to log on, go ahead and drop where you're viewing from today in the comments. We'd love to see where everyone is watching from. We hope you all are safe and healthy and are enjoying all of our education. So what education have you seen so far that you love? And what are you looking forward to? So we have some great education from the North America Artistic team. Every day, Monday through Friday, all the different teams are sharing their expertise, and we are very glad to be able to be doing that for you. So, should we get started? All right, so like I said, my name is Maureen. If you'd like to follow me on my pro page, it's at Maureen Bangle. It's behind me. And I would love for you to join me there as well. There's always fun things going on. Welcome to your blonde toolbox. I have a quick question for all of you, right? How many of you have a toolbox at home? Anybody? Anybody? I just got one for Christmas a couple years ago because I did not. But in our toolbox at home, we have different tools, right? You may have a hammer to hammer nails in the wall, hang photos, pliers, those are great, and maybe a screwdriver. All great tools, but they all serve a different purpose. And in our Aveda blonde toolbox, we have the same thing. So let me get rid of these guys real quick, and let's start talking about our Aveda blonde toolbox. So the first thing we're going to talk about is full spectrum permanent extra lifting cream. So who loves extra lifting cream? Anybody out there? It's one of my favorite tools that's not a high lift blonde, right? So it's not necessarily a bleach product. It gives us a different opportunity to use a blonde tool. So here are some facts about extra lifting cream. So 1.5% ammonia content. We usually mix it in a 1-to-2 ratio. The reason we mix it 1 part extra lifting cream to 2 parts developer is to make sure that that ammonia content is balanced out and diluted enough. We can get up to 5 levels of lift with extra lifting cream. Now, we say up to for a reason, right? There's going to be variables that are going to play into how many levels of lift that you get. One example might be hair type, right? Someone with more coarse hair, so the diameter of the hair strand, right? The bigger the diameter of the hair strand, the more difficult it may be to get those 5 levels of lift. We're going to use our extra lifting cream with our pastel blonde series. So we have our pastel violet, our pastel blue, and our pastel yellow orange. Now, I have some swatches here for you, and I'll post these on my pro page as well, but it gives you an idea. We have, this is blue, pastel violet, and pastel yellow orange. What's the one thing you notice about these swatches that may surprise you? For me, when I first saw them swatched out, it was, those aren't as pastel as I thought they were. They're actually much more tonal heavy, right? And the reason is because these tones have to be heavier so that when it's mixed with our high ammonia content, they show up in the end result. If they were too pastel to begin with, the ammonia content and possibly our developer may eat away at some of those pastel tones, and we wouldn't get the tonal reflection or deposition that we're looking for in our end result. So you can get up to 4 levels of lift with 30 volume, right? And 30-minute processing time. Up to 5 levels, 40 volume, and a 45-minute processing time. We're going to talk a little bit about developers and how they work later. What is extra lifting cream good for? Extra lifting cream is great for producing highlights in foil. You can use it on and off the scalp applications. That's a great way to use it. Polishing formulas, which I'm going to talk about in just a second, and you could use it as a toner. So here's a little tidbit on polishing formulas. We talk about this in one of our hair color magic classes, but I think this is a great way to utilize extra lifting cream. Mixing extra lifting cream with 20 or 30 volume, you'll see on the bottom here, this is my original swatch. And when I use extra lifting cream with 20 or 30 volume, it just polishes off some of that tone and color that's on hair. So it's a great way for blondes, but also your other guests like brunettes and redheads to polish off some of that color. So I like to think about silver when it's tarnished. It gets really dark, and we can go ahead and polish off some of that darkness and bring out that vibrancy of the silver. That's what these polishing formulas do. And like I said, extra lifting cream with 20 or 30 volume are beautiful choices for that. Extra lifting cream is also great as a toner after you've done a bleach application. However, the little asterisk here is because we want to make sure that we're not putting this high ammonia content product on someone's new growth on their scalp after they've had a bleach application. So our advice to you is do just a tiny micro retouch that's just tapped on the scalp with a 0N, so no ammonia, and then go ahead and use your extra lifting cream from that micro retouch out to the mid-lengths and ends. Because the extra lifting cream has that higher ammonia content, it'll help eat away at some of those yellowy tones that still may be in the hair. It's not going to take you a level lighter, but it's just going to help refine some of those tones that are left over from natural remaining pigment. Extra lifting cream is also great for women and men who have up to 25% gray. We can still use it at up to 25% gray. So it's a great option for that. Remember, extra lifting cream is a completely colorless formula. So there is no tone in it whatsoever. It is a colorless base with a high ammonia content. So check out extra lifting cream or write down in the comments what your favorite uses are for using extra lifting cream. I'd love to hear about them. Next, Full Spectrum Deep Shade 12 and Shade 14. I have those right here in my toolbox as well. So, Full Spectrum Deep, how many of you are using Shade 12 and Shade 14 from Full Spectrum Deep for your blondes? They are great options for your blondes as well. So let's talk about those a little bit too. Full Spectrum Deep, we use a 1:2 ratio here as well. We can get up to 6 levels of lift in a 30-minute processing time. Again, there's always going to be variables that are going to affect those 6 levels of lift. That's why we always say up to 6 levels of lift. Just to give you some examples, 20 volume is actually what Full Spectrum Deep was formulated for, is use with 20 volume. So you can, in 30 minutes, get up to 6 levels of lift depending on what you're putting it on. 30 volume, same thing, 30 minutes, but we're going to get up to a half a level of additional lift. And if we chose 40 volume color catalyst, in 30 minutes time, we could get up to 1 level additional lift with our Shade 12 or Shade 14. The difference between the two of those is Shade 14 actually doesn't have more ammonia in it. It has a few more alkalizers in it. So that helps. What do those alkalizers do? They change the pH of the color, which helps swell that cuticle and allows the other active ingredients to start lifting that hair. So that is where the difference is between Shade 12 and Shade 14. What are these two great for? Again, any sort of foil work, they're great. On the scalp applications with 20 volume, because Deep is a different animal compared to extra lifting cream. Manufacturer's instructions do not recommend 30 or 40 volume on the scalp for Full Spectrum Deep, so keep that in mind. And it also could be used as a toner as well, using that same micro base that we talked about with ELC. So couple things about ELC and 12N. I'm not sure how well this is going to pick up on the camera. It's kind of tough, but what we actually did is we did a swatch of Extra Lifting Cream and one of shade 12 in Deep. The reason I did a swatch is because there's not a whole lot of difference, but I will say that Extra Lifting Cream will always appear lighter and a little bit brighter because it is that that colorless high lift blonde formula. Shade 12 does have a little bit of natural series in it. Like you said, you can see it's not a whole lot, but in your final result, ELC will always appear a little bit brighter because it is that colorless formula. So keep that in mind as well. Anytime you are doing blonde applications, even with your high lift blonde series, it is going to be best to reapply. The reason I say that 3 times, you don't have to do it 3 times, but it is an important point. So your blonding, any of these products that we're talking about today, your maximum blonding or the most lift will be happening in the first 20 minutes. So that's why we want to make sure to go back and reapply, remix and reapply. That's important too. So you want to have a fresh formula, but reapplying after that 20-minute window is really going to help boost your lift. Remember, most of the lift happens in those first 20 minutes. So it's really, really, really important. Any questions so far on our 3 high lift blonde options?
Just one question about the swatches that you just held up.
Yes.
Was there any tones or was it straight?
No, so what I actually did for these swatches to see the tone themselves is it was ELC and shade 12 with 20 volume. I wanted to see if anything would deposit onto these swatches. There was no tone whatsoever on these swatches, and they were both pale yellow to start out with. At the very top, you can see what we started out with, but that they were just ELC and 20 and shade 12 and 20 volume, just to see the tonal difference.
And everybody loves a lot of love for the deep shade 12.
Oh, all right.
A lot of love for that. And I think that's pretty much it. And then somebody says, great visual and great flip chart.
All right, thank you. So in terms of full spectrum deep shade 12 and shade 14, for those of you that showed lots of love for it, if you could, put in the comments, what are your favorite tonal combinations, right? So tell me what you love to use with shade 12 and shade 14. I'd love to hear them, and I'm sure everybody in the Aveda network would love to hear them as well too. ELC, same thing. I love both, but I tend to grab ELC to use pastel blue and pastel violet with quite a bit. Those are the two. I love that combination, and I use that quite a bit. And like I said, ELC, I may actually do a little bit of expanding the rules and use my light full spectrum pure tones with ELC too. It's a great option as well.
Sorry,
Another question.
Another question just came on, and I thought it was a really good question.
Yeah.
For your up to levels on your things, are those based on the universal scale or the 1 through 10? So for the levels of lift, the question was, when you're talking about levels of lift, is that based on the natural level finder or is that based on the universal lifting scale? We'll talk about it a little bit more in just a little while, but these are straight from the Full Spectrum Deep swatch chart. So we have a natural level finder, that is to find your natural levels, and a universal lifting scale. So this is the scale of levels that your hair or anyone's hair will go through as it lifts. So remember, usually we're basing lifting scales on, especially Full Spectrum Deep is a great way to remember it because you'll find it right in your swatch chart. But there is the universal lifting scale, which actually lifts in smaller increments. So this, I will say, when we talk about it a little bit later, I'll reiterate this, but this is not an Aveda lifting scale. It is a universal lifting scale that all color lines use. So changes up our perspective a little bit on that in terms of lifting.
So, extra lifting cream. It is 1.5% ammonia. It is a colorless base, right? So no color, no tone in that whatsoever. It can lift up to 5 levels, depending on what you're putting it on, right? It's mixed with our pastel series, the pastel blue, pastel violet, and pastel yellow orange. But like I said, if you want to expand the rules a little bit, go ahead and check out some full spectrum light pure tones if you'd like. Full spectrum deep shade 12 and shade 14. Here we have a little bit of tone, a tiny bit of tone in shade 12 and shade 14. This will lift up to 6 levels of lift depending upon what you're putting it on. You can use it with 20, 30, or 40. I would just say when we talk about developers here in a second, remember with 30 volume and 40 volume, you're going to get only up to an additional half a level or up to an additional 1 level of lift. Remember, Full Spectrum Deep was formulated for 20 volume, so you can get great results with 20 volume. And they're both great for highlights, on the scalp applications, toners, lots of good options. So now that we've talked about those 2 high lift components to our toolbox, let's talk a little bit, I'm just going to scooch this out of the way for a minute. Let's talk a little bit about our developer choices when we're talking about high lift blonde series, right? So our developers do a couple of things, but the 2 things we're going to focus on now is lift and deposit. So who lifts the best and who deposits the best, and what combinations or what options do we have? So for 10 volume, we get some lift, right? That's what it's designed to do, but its primary function is to deposit tone. 20 volume, the reason it's everybody's favorite, it's the most popular, is because it does equal lift and deposit, right? It's the safe option. It's the one we love most of the time for gray coverage, although we can talk about that another day. But 20 volume equal lift and deposit. When we get to 30 and 40 volume, I want to make sure everybody really pays attention to this. 30 and 40 volume help us. They have more power, right? They have more gas. If they were a car, we're going to talk about that a little later, but they have more gas. They have more working time. So they're not faster, but they help last longer. So 30 volume and 40 volume will give you lots of lift. However, in hair, just like in life, there's always give and take. So for that lots of lift, we have to sacrifice a little bit of deposit of that tone. So a good tip here is if you're using 30 or 40 volume in a formula, you may want to make your pure tones stronger or make your formula type stronger. The reason is 2 things. 1, 30 and 40 volume are so active, they may eat away at some of those tones in your bowl. And 2, we want to make sure that we have enough tonal deposit. They're not designed to deposit a whole lot of tone, right? So a tip that I learned from the wonderful Loopy Voss is if you're doing an ELC formula, you could actually put, if you're doing an on the scalp extra lifting cream formula, you could do an application of 40 volume, right? Because you can do that with ELC, extra lifting cream on the scalp. How many minutes do we get for that maximum lift with all of our blonde products? 20 minutes. So when you go back to reapply, instead of reapplying with 40 volume, how about you do the same formula with 20? And what is that going to give us? It's going to give us more deposit. So that first application is going to give us lots of lift, and that second application right over the top is going to give us a little bit more deposit in our finished look. So a little bit, again, thinking outside of the box, but a great tip for that extra lifting cream guest that you're looking for maybe a little bit more punch in terms of lift and tonal deposit in your final results. So any questions on lift and deposit or from anything else?
How much ammonia is in deep 12 and 14?
So the question was how much ammonia is in shade 12 and 14 from Full Spectrum Deep. Shade 12 is about the same as ELC or extra lifting cream, about 1.5%. Shade 14, the alkalizers, there's a few more alkalizers in there. It's proprietary information, so I don't have that exact answer for you, but it's not necessarily a higher ammonia content. The alkalizer makeup is a little bit different. So that's what allows us to get that extra half a shade, up to extra half a shade of lift.
And then we just want to confirm when adding that second application that
yes.
you just talked about. So when are you adding that second application?
So the second application would be after that first application has been on for 20 minutes. So I want to make sure we keep saying that throughout this whole Instagram live, is anytime you're doing blonding, that first 20 minutes is when you're going to get the most lift of your processing time. So the 40 volume application would go on for 20 minutes. At the 20-minute mark where you reapply, we would drop it to 20 and reapply right over that first application.
And then for the tone of
yes.
would it be standard with it being 20? Or
I would go to standard. Unless your texture type and density tells you otherwise, but I would say standard for the 20 volume application. And I think Loopy's watching, so Loopy, if you have any other suggestions on that, please feel free to jump in.
Why is 5 volume more sheer when toning? If in theory, the lower developer has more deposit.
So all of the, if you're talking, can you clarify a little bit on what you're toning with the 5 volume? What color category?
5 volume only works less time, not a lot of color.
So, okay, so if you're using 5 volume for toning, 5 volume, like I said, when we get to the gas part of the cars, which we're going to talk about a little later, I know that sounds kind of funny, but so 5 volume just doesn't have a whole lot of gas in the car, right? It's like on 1/8 of a tank, so it's going to run out of gas or working time faster than your 10 volume developer would. So hope that helps. Anything else, or can we scooch on? One more? All right.
What is the difference between applying 40 and 20 versus 30?
So what you're going to do when you apply that first application is 40 volume is going to give you that boost of lift, and then 20 over the top of it is going to give you more deposit. 30 volume, if you just did 30 volume on its own, I know it sounds kind of funny, but it would do a lot of lifting and not a whole lot of depositing. So you might get great lift from 30 volume, but you may not get great deposition of tone to help with your neutralizing of your NRP and your end result in terms of tonal reflection. So good question. All right. So let's move on to Enlightener, powder lightener. Okay, so one of my favorite topics to talk about in class. I love talking about this because it's a great topic to talk about, and I think a lot of people love information about Enlightener. It helps them understand it better and how it works. So, Enlightener, powder lightener, we're talking about first, right? Enlightener, powder lightener. This one we use in salon all the time and have used for quite some time. So, ultimate high lift lightening, right? Unlimited amounts of lift, unlimited levels of lift. There's guidelines for that, but unlimited. We can do it. This will process up to a 60-minute processing time. So think about that just in terms of how long are we letting it sit on our guests in salon. 30 minutes? Maybe we could get better results if we let it sit a little bit longer. Cream booster is definitely a great option for on the scalp applications with our Enlightener powder lightener. Excuse me. Enlightener powder lightener is great for all kinds of foil work. So highlighting, tipping, foliage, all those ages that we talk about, right? Foliage, ombre, all those things. It's great for foil work. It's great for on or off scalp applications. Again, on the scalp, we're always going to use cream booster with it. We have that menthol blue chamomile that helps soothe the scalp. Color cleansing. Enlightener powder lightener is a great option for color cleansing. And progressive cleanses. And if you guys missed that, check out Loopy. She did her Hairbrained live last week was a progressive cleanse that you can do right at the shampoo bowl. It's a great option for Enlightener powder lightener. And we're mixing this in a 1-to-2 ratio as well. So let's talk about Enlightener powder lightener. Okay, so first of all, Enlightener powder lightener has 2 active ingredients in it, right? Sodium metasilicate and potassium persulfate. Sodium metasilicate and potassium persulfate. So the sodium metasilicate actually helps swell that cuticle some, so that the persulfates in potassium persulfate can go in and help break up the melanin and make that hair appear lighter and brighter. Those 2 active ingredients need to be completely dissolved in the mixture before they are completely activated. And that's why we recommend whisking for 45 seconds before you apply Enlightener to any hair. This will ensure that those ingredients are completely dissolved and activated. Now, I wouldn't recommend whisking your Enlightener or any product really until you are ready to apply it to the hair. And I'm going to show you why. If I mixed 4 bowls of Enlightener, a 10 volume, a 20 volume, a 30 volume, and a 40 volume, and applied it to the same hair for 20 minutes, 4 different pieces of hair, but the same color, what would you think would happen? Do you think they would be different or would they be the same? Most people say it would be different. It's actually exactly the same. So this is 10 volume, 20 volume, 30 volume, and 40 volume Enlightener mixed and applied on these swatches for 20 minutes. All developers in the first 20 minutes, remember that 20 minutes in blonding, that's when you get your biggest amount of lift, right? So in the first 20 minutes, they all do the same thing. It's what happens after that 20 minutes that changes. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. But the reason I say in the first 20 minutes, they all do the same thing and why it's so important is think about it. When I first started in beauty school, you know what I did? First of all, they made me start in the back. Because why? Because I was slow. So when I could easily rinse out highlights in the back of someone's hair if I started in the back, right? But I would mix up a whole bowl of bleach and I would use it for the whole time, the whole highlight. I don't know about you guys, but did those front foils ever match the back foils? Most of the time, not. Because that Enlightener or that bleach, the first 20 minutes, you're going to get the most lift. So I suggest mixing smaller batches and more often, and you will get more even lift and you will get maximum lift out of your Enlightener powder lightener. For me in the salon, I know people say, but Mo, I don't have time to keep running back and forth to dispense or to the lab and remixing bowls of Enlightener. I agree. So what I actually do is I will put my Enlightener in the bottom of the bowl, developer on top. I don't whisk anything. I take multiple bowls out with me and I make sure that when I'm ready for that bowl of color, then I whisk, right? You're okay letting it sit there. It's really the activation happens when it's all combined together. But I promise you, you will have better end results with your Enlightener if you mix small batches and often. About every 20 minutes is a good time to remix. So keeping that in mind, let's see what else. For a reapplication, sometimes, I don't know about you, but in salons, sometimes I can't get, especially when I'm dealing with corrective color, I may not be able to get my perfect lift with Enlightener in the first go. Sometimes I'm really close, but I'm not quite there. So a tip is if you do have to do a reapplication, rinse that Enlightener product, rinse that first application off. Don't shampoo it. I know that sounds kind of funny, but shampoo starts the process of that cuticle closing down. It doesn't obviously completely do it, but it starts the process. So rinse out that first application. Take your guest back to the chair, dry them with a cool dryer, and go ahead and do your second application. I guarantee you that little bit of lightening that needs to happen will happen very fast. So that's a tip for reapplication. If she's been processing for 45 minutes or so, you know you're not going to get that last bit of lift, that's a good tip for reapplication. So we do have our sunflower, castor, and jojoba oil in this Enlightener product. It's those protective oils that help keep the hair nice and healthy. However, I would say, remember manufacturer's instructions say not to put this under heat, right? We do not recommend heat at all. It actually breaks down the protective oils in there and can cause guest injury. So please don't use heat. Please, please, please. Questions on Enlightener Powder Lightner?
We have a few, but Lupe did answer those.
Okay.
And you actually kind of covered it eventually.
Okay.
About your small batches and about every 20 minutes. And then with the reapplying of the bleach, why would you not do it on wet hair?
So hair can only hold so much moisture. So I like to make sure that I get as much, it doesn't have to be bone dry, but I would say get as much moisture out as possible to make sure that that Enlightener is not diluted at all by any water that's left in the hair.
Okay. Any equalizing solution when reapplying Enlightener?
I like to wait. I personally like to do my equalizing solution before I do a tone or toner, blonde finish, whatever it may be. So I don't do it at that point, but I will do it before I move forward with a toner or blonde finish, after I've removed all the Enlightener.
And then one more, it looks like you can't use heat even in foils.
No, I wouldn't recommend using heat at all with Enlightener. Like you said, one, manufacturer's instructions, but two, it does start to break it down and can actually damage the hair further because the protective oils start to break down. So I promise you, hand on my mother's grave, I do not use heat in the salon. All of our clients are processed on just air temperature. So, all right, let's move on to the newest addition to the family, Enlightener Freehand Bond Strengthening Lightner. So how many of you, in the comments, how many of you love the new Freehand Bond Strengthening Lightner? Go ahead and drop your comments down below. I know this has been kind of a tough one, but we're going to get through it. Hopefully this will help explain a little bit more what it's meant to do, what it's not meant to do, and know again that not every tool in your toolbox is meant for everyone, right? Not every tool in your toolbox is meant for every job. They all have their place. So this is not one to go crank down or tighten something that you normally would use a wrench for. This is for pounding in nails in the wall, right? So keep in mind that they all serve a purpose and they all have a job. So Enlightener Freehand Bond Strengthening Lightner, we have up to 9 levels of lift. Notice the asterisk because we'll talk about that. We have kaolin clay. So this is what helps create that encapsulation of this product that we've all wanted for such a long time. In addition to the sunflower, castor, and jojoba oil, we now have kukui oil in this one as well, in the Freehand Lightner. Where else do we find kukui? Pop quiz, Demi Plus. Demi Plus, that's what gives us that great shine and that great condition. So we've added kukui oil to the Freehand Bond Strengthening Lightner. And we also have our Bond Strengthening Complex that has the lysine, the L-arginine, and the PCA amino acids that go in and help prevent breakage or reduce breakage by 62% when it is lightening. So I would say one of the things to remember about the Freehand Bond Strengthening Lightner, it's bond strengthening, not bond building. We're doing a different action here. We're being preventative, not reparative, right? So that's what its job is. It is going to give us more subtle, organic end results. And the reason is that this one is meant for open air techniques, right? For balayage and hair painting. It is not meant for foil, right? It is not meant for foil. This one is great in a 1-to-1 or 1-to-2 ratio. The difference here would be 1-to-1 is great for hair painting. What do we know about the difference between hair painting and balayage? This one has come up a lot in classes where people are like, I thought I was doing balayage all this time. And it turns out I was doing hair painting. Hair painting is surface painting. So it's only going to sit on the top of the hair. It's not meant to penetrate through that section. So that is a 1-to-1 ratio is great for hair painting. If we were doing balayage, a more traditional balayage, where that section of hair is being saturated with that product, a 1-to-2 ratio is going to be a better option for us as well. It's a little bit less viscous, it's a little bit looser of a formula, so it's going to saturate through that section better. One tip for you guys in mixing. Spatula. So in Lightner powder lightener, we use this guy, right? Whisk for 45 seconds. With the Enlightener freehand bond strengthening lightener, I suggest using a spatula. The reason is this formula, if you've used it, it's not a low dust formula like our Enlightener powder lightener. The spatula is much easier to mix that formula in a bowl. Same thing, 45 seconds. We want to make sure it's activated, but it's a lot less mess. So give it a whirl. I promise you, it's a lot easier and a lot less messy. So in terms of our Enlightener powder lightener and the freehand, a couple of things that will help you in terms of getting maximum lift. So number one, saturation, right? I will tell you, you will always get better lift if you saturate that hair with a lot of product. So one of the examples I use is, we're not doing glazed donuts if we want maximum lift with our Enlightener, right? We don't want to see hair through our product. We want cupcake frosting. We want it nice and thick and nice and white on that hair to make sure that we get maximum lift. Because remember, I don't know if you guys remember this, this is one of the things that has stuck with me for 20 years with Enlightener. When it's wet, it's working. When it's dry, it's dead. So we have to make sure that that product stays nice and wet so that it can keep lifting and keep working. So remember that. Timing is key as well. So 30 minutes might not be enough time in your processing time to get the lift you're looking for. So with the freehand, we recommend 45 minutes to an hour. Enlightener has up to 60 minutes processing time. So think about your timing, right? How much time are we letting it sit there and do its work? Isolation is the last thing I wanted to talk about. So for Enlightener powder lightener, foils are great. It's not the best option for, in fact, it's not recommended at all with the freehand bond strengthening lightener. So I'll give you some options. If you do want to separate that hair, I would try either saran wrap or plastics. That seems to work really well. My friend Luis Gonzalez talked about that on his on his Hair Color Magic Live yesterday on Loopy's Instagram, using plastics or saran wrap. So saran wrap, obviously we've all used. Another great option is go to hairbrain.pro. They're eco wraps that are tapioca based. My teammate Haley from the Hair Color Magic team talked about those last week as well. So go to hairbrain.pro to check those out. What I love about both of those options is that they're both transparent. You can see through it. So as the hair is processing, you can still see what's going on beneath it. So questions on those two products so far? Loopy, are you keeping up with my questions over there? All right, thank you, I appreciate it. Okay, so let's talk about now how these developers work with, how our developers work with our two powder lighteners that we just talked about. Enlightener powder lightener and the Enlightener freehand bond strengthening lightener. Imagine, I'm not an artist, I do hair, right? So forgive me for my photos. Imagine these things at the top here were cars. The power is in the powder when we're talking about our lighteners, not necessarily our developer. Our developer gives us our working time. So the car is our Enlightener, either one that we're talking about, the freehand or the powder lightener. The developer is the gas that goes into that car. So 10 volume, let's say, has a quarter of a tank. 20 volume is half a tank. 30 volume is 3/4 of a tank. And 40 volume is a full tank. Now, these cars, even though they have different amounts of gas in their tank, it doesn't mean that 40 volume, because it has a full tank of gas, that it's going to go faster than the car that only has a quarter of a tank. The difference is it will go longer. So in terms of our powder lighteners, they will work longer. They will continue to lighten longer. It's not faster, it's longer. So all these developers I showed you with my swatches, right? They all do the same thing in the first 20 minutes. So that's what this red line is here. 10, 20, 30, 40 volume, all do the same thing in the first 20 minutes. It's what happens after that first 20 minutes that sets them apart. 10 volume, that Enlightener car, will run out of gas first. It'll run out of gas before 20. 20 volume will run out before 30, and 30 before 40. So that's why with our freehand, our open air techniques, we always recommend 30 or 40 volume. The reason is there isn't that insulation, right, of a foil that's giving us a little bit of energy or keeping that energy in. It is in the open air. That oxygen that's in that developer is going to dissipate faster. So we need to make sure we have enough power or working time to get us where we want to go. Good? I know it's probably a little bit different than maybe some of you have heard before, but remember, your Enlightener is the car and your developer is your gas you put in it. So those higher developers aren't going to work faster. They're going to continue to work longer. The higher the number on the bottle, the longer it will continue to lift. So I hope that helps and shifts your paradigm a little bit in terms of your lightning products that you have available to you. So back to the question, just to do a little bit of reviewing, we have our Enlightener powder lightener, right? So that one we're going to get, short people problems. Can't reach that. Okay, so ultimate high lift lightning, right? Unlimited levels of lift for Enlightener powder lightener. Up to that 60-minute processing time. Cream booster is great to use for on the scalp applications. It's good for foil work, tipping, foliage, ombre, all those techniques that we can do. Maybe techniques that look like balayage in the end result, but we want to use foils to get us to that point. Enlightener powder lightener is the best choice for that. On the scalp applications, color cleansing and progressive cleanses. Great for those types of techniques. Freehand bond strengthening lightener is up to 9 levels of lift on the universal lifting scale. So when we talk about that, the natural level finder, I should put it this way so you can see it, is to find our natural level. But the lifting scale is the stages of lightening that hair goes through with bleach in particular. So we want to make sure 9 levels of lift. It's actually, instead of 10 levels, how many do we have? 20 levels that we lift through. They're really like half levels. Again, this is the universal scale that all color companies use. So realistically, how many levels of lift is a good amount? 9 levels is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Maybe 4 levels of lift that we're used to looking at. We have the kaolin clay, the kukui oil, and the bond strengthening complex. This is going to help reduce breakage. Remember, it's preventative, not reparative. You're going to always get, with hair painting, balayage, open air techniques, a more natural, subtle, organic finish versus anything that you put in foil. This one, remember, this is the only one of the things we talked about today that's not the best. I would say you cannot reapply it because that encapsulation happens. 1-to-1 ratio for hair painting, that's surface painting. 1-to-2 ratio for more balayage techniques where you're saturating through the section. In terms of working time, remember that the higher the number, the more oxygen, the longer it will keep lifting. The longer that gas will stay in your Enlightener car. So Enlightener is the car, developers are the gas. So keep that in mind. They all do the same thing in the first how many minutes? I'm going to wait for your comments in the comments below, in the comment box. The first how many minutes do we get the most lift with all of them, or the same amount of lift? I'm going to wait. Vanessa's going to tell me when you guys are ready. So reapplication for your Enlightener powder. Lightner is good. Not so much with a free hand because of the encapsulation. I have some answers.
I'm seeing a lot of 20s.
Woohoo! Lots of 20s. All right. Good job, team. So now, are you ready? Any questions, first of all, before we get to any questions?
I got a couple of them.
All right.
The car analogy. Is
yes.
it for Enlightener or for both the bond strength?
I would say any of your blonding categories, whether it's ELC, Deep, Enlightener, you're going to get the most lift out of the first 20 minutes. Remember, like you said, working time, the higher the number on the bottle, the more working time you will get out of them. So yes.
So if you can process Enlightener for 60 minutes, how does that relate to developer timing?
So if you can process Enlightener for 60 minutes, I'm assuming, if I'm wrong, tell me. I'm assuming, how would that impact your developer choice, I guess is what I think you're asking. I would say, for me, I always go lower versus higher. Low and slow is always good. Vanessa knows, my sister's here with me, she does hair too. She knows I am the analogy queen. So here we go, we got one more for today. So if you imagine Enlightener with your lower developers, I think of Pac-Man, the video game Pac-Man. Pac-Man is the Enlightener, and Pac-Man is trying to eat the dots, right? Think of those dots as natural remaining pigment. That's how I think of it. Lower developers, 10 and 20 volume, are not as active as your higher developers when you're talking about your lighteners. And so you are able to calmly get all the dots, and most of them. 30 and 40 volume are actually more active. They have more energy. So think of Pac-Man on the super speed, where all of a sudden everything happens a lot faster and you really struggle to get all the NRP dots. You're always going to get cleaner lift with your lower developers. They will run out of gas sooner, but you'll get cleaner lift. So for me, I usually do not go above 20 volume for anything in foil. 30 and 40 volume can actually be also really active, and they can kill persulfates in your Enlightener. And what do persulfates do? Do you remember from way back when? About 20 minutes ago? The persulfates help break up the melanin and make the hair appear lighter and brighter. We need those persulfates. We don't want to kill them with our energy from our developer. So keep it low and slow. You'll always get cleaner results in that case. If you're doing open air, remember that's a different topic. We need that working time of 30 and 40 volume developers to keep working. We don't need them to run out of gas as quickly.
And then, sorry, I went back a little bit. So some of these may have been answered a little bit, but can you talk a little bit about Cream Booster and what its purpose is and what it's used for?
So Cream Booster is, it's a great product. I like to use it for on the scalp bleach applications. It does help. It has the cooling menthol and blue chamomile in it to soothe the scalp. I personally, and I encourage all of you, if you have a question on, or if you're questioning something that I've said and you really want to know for yourself, I encourage you to do a side-by-side analysis. I personally do not use Cream Booster in foils. It's an expensive bowl of color, And I like just Enlightener and Developer by itself when I'm talking about foils. Cream Booster always for on the scalp applications, but do a side-by-side test in a foil. See which one you like better. Enlightener and Developer by itself, or Enlightener, Developer, and Cream Booster. Check it out and make a decision for yourself for sure. Anything else?
I think, because Lupe did say that it could be a buffer for the scalp.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
So it's kind of what we just talked about. It's a buffer for the scalp, meaning that the blue chamomile and the menthol in it are soothing to the scalp when you're doing on the scalp applications. So really that's where I think Lupe's coming from. If she has any other comments or tips, she can comment on that. But that's really a great product to make sure you're buffering the scalp and making sure you're taking care of the scalp so it doesn't get too sensitive when you're doing on the scalp applications.
And then for the freehand Enlightener, our last question, you don't recommend resaturating with your freehand Enlightener?
For freehand Enlightener, I don't. The question was, you do not recommend reapplication. I personally don't, because once it starts to encapsulate, then if you try to reapply, it kind of flakes off. So for me, reapplication is not possible. It gets really messy, really messy. So now we're going to go to pop quiz, right? What products that we talked about today are great for foiling techniques? Highlights, foliage, tipping, singles, which are great products for that. Anybody? I know there's kind of a delay for these lives, but so some great techniques for foiling, great products for foiling would be Extra Lifting Cream, Full Spectrum Deep, and
Enlightener Powder.
Enlightener Powder Lightner. Perfect. All right, next. What product is best, or products are best mixed with a whisk? Best mixed with a whisk. Which ones are good for that? 45 seconds is always a good amount of time. Enlightener Powder Lightner and your ELC and your shade 12 and shade 14 from Full Spectrum Deep. How about a spatula? Which one is mixed best with a spatula? Freehand, right? So go out, this is just, this is a Wilton brand, Wilton, but find yourself a mini spatula, it'll help a lot. All right, which one of these products will help up to 25% gray coverage? Ooh, that was a tricky one. Which one will help up to 25% gray coverage? I know you all are saying, you're all typing in Extra Lifting Cream. They're
still on freehand.
Yeah. Like you said, I know there's a delay. I just want you to think about these.
ELC and G.
Okay. Which is great for balayage? Freehand is great for balayage, or even Enlightener Powder Lightner. We have some great options for balayage too. If you haven't gotten the freehand in yet at your salon or haven't had a chance to play with it, 0N, viscosity, or Cream Booster even for balayage techniques. And hair painting, freehand. What's the difference between these two? What ratio are we mixing up for balayage when we're talking about freehand? 1:2, and hair painting 1:1. So it stays on the surface of that section of hair. Great job, team. I hope you all had a chance to learn more about your blonde toolbox. Hopefully, and understand why you would choose one product over the other. Maybe sometime soon we'll do the opposite, right? Today we talked about lifting, and you are going to see some awesome techniques by my North America Artistic Color Team members in the next month. There's going to be foiling, there's going to be hair painting, there's going to be balayage, so stay tuned for those. And tomorrow, the spa team, my team member Jude Richter, is going to be doing a purification workshop right here on the handle North America Artistic Team. That is at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. So, are you ready? I'm going to try and I have my notes over there. If you're in LA, it's at noon. If you're in Denver, it's going to be at 1. If you're Central Standard Time in the Midwest, you're going to be at 2. And if you're on the East Coast, it's going to be 3 p.m. All right here with the North America Artistic Team. I hope you all had a great time today. We'll see you in our next workshop. Take care.